This rustic bread pudding recipe is real comfort food. It dates back centuries and it came from the necessity of not wasting food. So stale bread is the base of this recipe. It's believed to have evolved in the Middle Ages when eggs were added to make a custard. I've used a small panettone for my recipe. I bought it about 3 or 4 days ago, so it's seen it better days. So what I did was I've cut it into small cubes. This one has raisins in it, which I prefer it without raisins, but it's nice at Christmas to have the fruit in it. It adds that Christmassy feel to it. So we're going to cut up the bread into little pieces, and we're going to put it into I use a glass baking dish. I find it's better, so I always use that. So you just load that up, make sure that it's a really good thick layer. That's about 6 pieces of bread, so I ended up using the whole loaf. So you can judge it yourself. If you make it yourself, you can see how much you want it. I like it more bready and less custardy. So there we go, that's the package that I used, but that's the bread, so I've used all of the bread for it. I've also preheated the oven to 375 because you're going to bake this at 375 for about 45 minutes. If you've been cooking in the oven already, which I'd already made some little things, I put it down to 360 just because you don't want it to burn. So once you've cut up all your pieces and evenly distributed on your baking tray, you are going to whisk together the 4 eggs. Now I started out in a measuring jug, but I realised once I added all the rest of the wet ingredients it wasn't going to be big enough, so I added it to another container. So in the larger container you're going to add the rest of the ingredients. So you're going to whisk in the milk, you're going to whisk in the butter, the melted butter, the sugar, the teaspoon of cinnamon and the teaspoon of vanilla, and you're going to whisk it all together until it's all blended. Once everything's been mixed together, you're going to take your wet ingredients and you're going to pour it over the bread mixture. You're going to make sure it covers all of the bread. It was at this point that I added the extra bread because I like it quite thick. So you make sure all the bread is covered, and then you distribute it with your hands. Make sure that there's no bread that's left out that's not been soaked up. You want to leave it to sit for about 5 minutes so that the bread absorbs as much of the moisture as possible before it goes in the oven. Then you're going to put it in a 375 oven for 35 to 40 minutes. So I just wanted to add, you can also add a little bit of sugar on top of this, or I always put an extra little bit of cinnamon on top, depending on how sweet or cinnamony you like it. So once it's been soaking for a little while, that's what I do before I throw it in the oven. This second recipe, traditional mince pies, this is a very, very British recipe for Christmas. You can't have a Christmas without mince pies. So these trays are my, I've had these for years. I use them for my Yorkshire puddings. So I've given them a really hot wash and I'm now just wiping them out before I use them for my mince pies. This recipe is, the way I'm making it today, is probably one of the easiest recipes you will ever make. I'm using store-bought puff pastry and a store-bought can of mince pie mix, and it is literally put the two together, cook them up, and they are absolutely delicious. and it's a lot cheaper than buying them from the store. You can absolutely personalize them. You can add I've also in the past I've added brandy and whiskey to this mixture, which is the mince meat. It's not meat, it's fruits, and it's traditional Christmas flavours. As I said, it's called mince meat, but there is no meat in it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of flour on the countertop so that when I roll out my puff pastry, it's not going to stick to anything. I'll probably use it in the paper that it comes with first of all, but as you'll see, as you're using up all the pastry, I do tend to put it on the countertop. Obviously I don't want it to stick as I'm rolling it out. So the puff pastry is ready. We're going to cut out as many of these shapes, the circles, as possible. So I have 2 trays of 6. We're going to do the bases and the tops. So we'll fill the muffin tins with the pastry in the bottom. Put a spoonful of the mincemeat mixture in the middle, and then we're going to take the egg mixture and just put it around the outside of the pastry so that when you put the lids on, it's going to stick and you shouldn't have too much seepage. These cookie cutters are a little small. They're the only ones that I had, but you could make them a bit bigger so they fit the size of the muffin tins. So I'm going to make do for now, and we'll see how they turn out, but next time around I'm going to use a bigger shape. So once you've got them ready for the oven, you're going to have them on a 375 oven for 15 minutes. And then after 15 minutes, you're going to turn it down to 350, and that's for 25 minutes. And when you're finished, they are delicious. These mince pies have been around since, well, forever. It was the mid 17th century that they first became connected with Christmas, and it was in 1747 in the recipe printed in the cookery book, The Art of Cookery, that it became a sweet treat and is closer to what we have today, and it's still a special treat at Christmas. So you can see the bread pudding has really thickened up. It's absorbed all the custard and it is beautiful. You can slice into it and each piece is layers of custard and bread and raisins, and it's yummy. I really hope everyone gets to try these out.